This is what happens when you put your 3D printer on steroids. That's supposed to be a thimble. Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and welcome to my weekly vlog number 206 for Monday, February 22nd, 2021, or day 348 of COVID. So, by the way, when I give you that number, I'm basing that on when COVID first took effect on me, which was March the 15th. Beware the Ides of March. Can you identify what play Shakespeare wrote that is in? Yeah. Okay, so in the teaser you saw something. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. Bit of an experiment that didn't really go wrong, but didn't really go absolutely right. And I'm going to talk about my current projects and some very useful links. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a situation I find myself in, and I'm looking for advice. So let's jump right in. You'll notice there's nothing behind me hanging on here. I do not have a quilt to show you this week. I know, how unusual. I have not yet got to laying out my Australian quilt, getting it layered and quilting it. That's my plan to do this week. And you know how I procrastinate when it comes to quilting the actual quilt. Once I get into it, I'm fine. But I always find other things to do before I get to it. But anyways, the other things that I have found to do this week is I've been making some placemats that are possibly going to Meals on Wheels, and I'll speak more about that in a minute. So I did 4 that look something like this. Well, they look something like this because they have the same colors, but the pattern is different on each one. It is I think they call it a flip and fold or something like that, a technique basically where you put 4 fat quarters. These are made from fat quarters. Lay them out, cut them one way, rearrange the sections and cut them again, and you get something like this. I've made these kind of placemats before. It's kind of fun and it's fairly fast. And if you look very closely in the center, I did a little bit of quilting. I wish my free motion was as good as this, but that was done on the embroidery machine. And I think you can see it on the back a little bit too. Ooh, got fuzzies on the back. Got to take my lint roller to that. So I've done 4 of those. Those are completely done. And I'm doing another pattern, which is not hard, but it's tedious. And I've just got 4 tops for 4 more placemats done. And my plan today is to get them layered and quilted and done. So this is what they look like. It's very basic. It's very easy. But I said it's very tedious too in terms of sewing. You're just sewing basically straight lines. So that's what I've been working on over the past week. So nothing really exciting, nothing else to show you in terms of a current project. So let's jump right into YouTube channel of the week. And this is about one of my other favorite topics, food. This week's YouTube channel is all about food. It's called Sortedfood, and it is operated by 4 gentlemen who are British, and they are cooks, but 3 are amateurs, 1 is a professional chef. Now, unlike other cooking shows, this one isn't just a how do you do it. It is more of a series of challenges, or it's looking at products that come from exotic places, or it's talking about technique in cooking. There's a whole variety of things that they do, and every video is a little bit different. I find their sense of humor very uplifting, and I do learn some things about the world of food and culinary arts. So if you want something that's just a little bit different and delicious to watch, then I suggest you check out Sortedfood. So the link for Sorted is in the show notes below. There is a link for this week's Stephen and Walter Live. We had a bit of a false start on Sunday. I don't know why. I had it all set up, ready to go. All I had to do was hit the button for YouTube to go live, and I did, and it just spun its little hoofies. It didn't seem to want to connect. I tried several things for a couple of minutes at the beginning of it. Finally, I had to go right out of it and go back in again. And that's a bit of a pain in the butt because before you go live, there's certain information you need to fill out, and it takes a little bit of time. So we apologize, Quilter and I, for the delay, but the video is there. Someone wrote to me this morning saying they couldn't, asked if we had done it because they didn't see the link. Well, it's there. I sent them the link. So maybe when they came on, it hadn't finished processing yet. I don't know. But anyways, it is there, and yeah, you can check it out. I do have last week's episode of The Idiot Quilter linked in the show notes below if you hadn't seen that yet, and that's where I've been talking about the retreat and the overwhelming response we've had to that. And there is a series of links under face mask patterns. Yesterday on Stephen and Quilter Live, Quilter was showing his latest adventures in sewing face masks, and he's been looking for the ultimate pattern sort of a thing. So while he described each one, I modeled them for you. And there was some individuals who want to know where he found these particular links. So Quilter pulled those up, and I have them in the show notes below. There is the pattern he likes, and there's an instruction video there and a template as well. So those are all links under face mask patterns. So you can check that out if you're interested. So that takes me to what's pissing me off this week. It is pissing me off what I'm about to talk about, but at the same time, I'm wondering how to handle the situation. And I'm kind of looking towards advice from you people out there. Now, yesterday I talked extensively about the conflict I'm having with the president of my guild, to the point where now I am about to resign. Actually, she thinks I've already resigned because basically she took something I said as my formal declaration of resignation and ran with it. But that's the kind of individual she is, and I'm not going to get into that part of it today because I got into that yesterday. But now I have a little bit of a dilemma. You know, I feel that I have been unjustly wronged by this individual. And this is an individual who might go around and talk about it from her point of view, which people do, and it's going to make me come out looking like a criminal. I'm not. I'm an innocent in this. This was a situation that was a molehill that was made into a mountain, and that's what the people in my guild at the executive level tend to do quite a bit. Okay, you've heard me talk about that before. So later this week, I'm going to send my formal resignation. Now, as far as she is concerned, the president, I've already resigned, but I'm sending my formal one. And it basically is very businesslike. It basically says that I have resigned due to a conflict of interest between myself and the president. And then it tells them what arrangements I will make for them to get the property of the guild that I hold as secretary, which basically means the minutes, the records of our meetings, the key to the mailbox, things like that, how they will be delivered to them. Okay, fine. It's a very short message. I don't get into any details. I don't know how much the other members of the executive know about this situation. I do know that whatever they do know about it came from the president, and that's one-sided. And there's always two sides to everything, isn't there? Maybe sometimes more than two sides. So now this is my thought. Quilter supports me on this, but I'm not so sure I support myself. I'm thinking of sending out a general message to the general membership stating that I have resigned from the executive. But I'm not sure how to word that. I want them to understand that the reason I have resigned is not because I have done something wrong. I want them also to understand that I have been wronged. I'm not looking for sympathy. I am not looking for a big protest. Oh my God, Steve's not secretary anymore. Rah, rah, rah. Down with the executive, up with Steve. No. furthest thing from my mind, and as if that would ever happen. Not. Okay? But, and this is going to sound sexist, and how many times have I said that in my videos, that this is going to sound sexist? I am the only man. There's 80-some women. There's such a thing as gossip. And women are very good at it. Okay? I'm not saying that in a derogatory sense. What I mean is they tend to communicate things that men wouldn't bother to talk about. And one of those things is speculation. Well, any group will speculate as to suddenly why is there an opening for secretary? And that's when the rumor mill starts. I also don't trust this individual on the executive not to put out something that's going to make me look like a prick. Okay? And it's very easy for ladies to consider men pricks. Yes, there is a history of men being pricks to women. We know that. And so I don't really hold that against women because, you know, if you've been constantly burned, then you're not really going to have a positive outlook, or you're going to be somewhat suspicious, right, of what those people that have burned you in the past might be doing now. But I don't know how to word this. I don't want it to sound vengeful or vindictive. I don't want it to sound like I've trying to gain her sympathy, or I'm trying to, create an insurrection against this member of the executive. No. But inside of me, and maybe it's an ego thing, maybe it's a pride thing, I do feel the need to let them hear my side of the story without going into messy details. So I'm trying to word this. It's going to be short, it's going to be sweet. At least, I guess, the way that I want to word it is to put into the back of the mind of the general membership that there are always two sides to a story. So that you should always be critical about that which you hear. So I'm playing with the wording for this. I want to send it out probably later this week, after I have sent my official resignation to the executive. So how do you do something like that? Or should I just not? Should I just go radio silent and not say anything at all? I mean, there is a positive side to not saying anything in a situation like this, and that is you're leaving it up to their imaginations. So if you say nothing, there is nothing you need to deny, nothing you need to defend. On the other hand, when you say nothing, it looks like you have something to hide, and I don't. And yesterday on Stephen Walter Live, I talked about the situation, and just to recap very briefly what the situation is, it has to do with the retreat. I decided I would make the opportunity available to the guild members for the retreat. I sent it out in the general email from our site, from the guild's email. It didn't come from my email personally, it came from the guild email. And apparently this is the issue, the first issue that the president has, that I didn't ask permission to do that. I should have sent it from my own personal email. Well, okay. First of all, I don't think I need the permission of the executive for that. I am the secretary. The secretary has access to that. The secretary's role, of many, is for communication amongst the members. I'm a member as well as the secretary, so I was communicating. The second issue was that I was soliciting for money. That because I was being sponsored by some commercial interests, that I was basically sending out something that was for profit for these businesses and for myself as well. In fact, I was told that it was for the benefit of my YouTube channel, for the profit of my YouTube channel. No, you know me well enough to know that I don't get any money except from the advertisement. And you know how much I get a month in that, like pennies. but I don't have Super Chat turned on. I don't ask you to join, as in the paid part that YouTube has. I don't have a Patreon site. I don't ask my subscribers, my viewers, for money for anything, and I certainly did not ask the guild members. This retreat is absolutely free. No strings attached. The sponsors are there because I wanted to have gift certificates, prizes. And the 3 sponsors that I got willingly donated. Now, sure, they'll probably get a little business from doing that because the gift certificates are for their shops. But is there anything wrong with that? My guild gives out gift certificates every month as prizes. My guild has paid advertising for local quilt stores in their newsletter. The guild is getting money for that. I'm not asking for any money, and there will be no solicitation whatsoever. All I wanted to do was make the guild members aware of what was coming up, because our president, the one who has issues with this, is constantly talking about creating opportunities to keep people in our guild from feeling isolated during COVID. We've had some sew days. They've been very successful. But we usually have 2 retreats in a year, and we can't have those this year. Those are physical retreats. I have yet heard anybody on the executive talk about having a virtual retreat like I'm having. I don't know if it's because they don't know how to do that, or they just don't have the ambition or the time to do it. Whatever. I am doing one. But I'm doing this. Yes, I'm doing this for selfish purpose. I am. It has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with fun. I want to have some fun. I miss not being able to go to a physical retreat. I have been doing retreats and sew days, a variety of them from a variety of sources, on using Zoom. So I thought, I have gained a certain amount of expertise in how to use Zoom. I feel confident that I can offer this to a larger group out there. And so I let the guild know about it early. And I've had about 26 people join up when I sent that out. That's all it was. I'm offering them a free opportunity to do something that our president preaches about. And yet, according to the president, I'm doing it for personal financial gain. Well, I am not. So this is something that I kind of want to work into my message to the general guild members, because there may be some people that are suspicious of that. And you know, I can see where they're coming from, except they obviously don't know me, because I'm not that kind of person. I don't take advantage of other people. So anyways, that's my dilemma. Maybe you have some suggestions. Bottom line is, I'm pretty much done with the guild. You knew that was coming because I've mentioned this before. The majority of the ladies in the guild that are not on the executive are very, very nice ladies. I enjoy their company. I enjoy, doing the sew days and things like that. What I don't enjoy is I don't enjoy working with people who basically are control freaks, micromanagers, and think because they're sitting on the executive, they have some God-given power over all of humanity. As I've said before, a guild is for fun. It's for socializing. It's people with a common interest getting together and sharing that interest. It does not cure cancer. It does not solve world hunger, nor does it create the definitive vaccine for COVID. So let's get over ourselves and let's stop making mountains out of molehills, because that's what this situation is. And trying to do character assassination for whatever reason, I have no idea. So, if you've got thoughts on this or whatever, please send me an email, write them in the comments, whatever. But so that's what I'm pissed off at this week. My little dilemma. All right, let's move on, shall we? And product review. Okay, I went to Ultimate Sewing last week. Walter and I did. We were in the store. We had booked for an hour and a half. You have to book for appointments. You still do the masks, the social distancing, the whole bit. But because our government here in Ontario has lifted slightly the lockdown restrictions, we're able to do this. And boy, I've been itching to get to the fabric store and just to buy. And I have a little fund in my budget that I set up for this, and I add a little bit to it every week. And so I have massed a nice little sum in there. So I can go in and spend. And I did. And I bought lots of fabric. And I bought some other things too. And I dropped about $700. Now, before you gasp at that, Walter did some shopping too. He dropped over $1,500 because he bought a brand new serger, plus fabric and stuff. Anyways, I'm going to talk about those things and show you what I bought and everything in more detail on the next episode of The Idiot Quilter. I'm not going to do it here because I think it's more appropriate on The Idiot Quilter. But just to let you know, it was fun. I had a great time in there spending the money. Okay, so yeah. So that takes me to my segment where I usually do a review of a book, but I've run out of books, for crafting and stuff like that. Then I was doing podcast reviews. Well, I've run out of podcasts to review with you too. I thought of doing some reviews on websites, but the sites that I go to on a regular basis usually involve Amazon. So nothing there. So I got thinking, what can I put in this spot? And this has been something that I have thought of for years. I've always kind of wanted to write a book, but I've never got around to it. And I don't know if I ever will. I probably won't. And you might say, well, what's the topic of the book? Well, the topic I would like to write about is about my grandmother. My grandmother Bland, my father's mother. She was my favorite grandmother. I shouldn't say that. It's like parents saying they have a favorite child, but we do, don't you? Don't you have a favorite child? You do. You just don't admit it to it. Well, I had a favorite grandmother, and that was my grandmother Bland. And she was the most wonderful person in the world as far as I was concerned. She's been gone now for quite a while. She died relatively young. She died in 1979. I was in university. She had stomach cancer or something else. She had a cancer. She'd had it for quite a long time, but my grandmother didn't really believe in going to a doctor because she considered a lot of them quacks. And so she basically doctored herself. And it just got to the point where it went too far. She finally was hospitalized and was in the hospital for about 3 weeks and then passed away. I remember seeing her for the last time just before she passed away. And it was hard because I love that woman. She was unorthodox, yet she was conservative. She was fun, yet she could be serious. She was everything. And as a kid growing up, I loved going to my grandmother's. I did. And fortunately for me, I got to see my grandmother quite a bit. We didn't live in the same town, but we didn't live far away at the time when I was a kid. And I would always spend a week or whatever, and a lot of weekends with my grandmother. And, well, there's a lot of stories about my grandmother that I have. They are fond memories, but they are weird memories too. Because my grandmother, as I said, was a little unorthodox. She was a bit of a free spirit in some ways. So I have all kinds of stories, which are memories. And you know what happens with memories. They do get embellished, okay? But I thought I'd start sharing some of the stories about my grandmother with you. And I want to start with one. Now, you're not going to believe this, but it absolutely happened, and I am not embellishing it. Because this is a story you can't embellish because it's just Well, let me tell you. First of all, my grandmother's name was Daisy. Okay, there's a name, old-fashioned name, Daisy. And my grandmother Daisy, she had a little dog. It was a Chihuahua. Tiny little thing. Its real name was Cindy. Who names a dog Cindy? Well, my grandmother did. But I don't know why, but this dog got a nickname, which is what I knew the dog by as a kid, Poonie. Don't ask me why, Poonie. Where'd that name come from? I'm not even sure how to spell Poonie. P-U-N-N-I-E, P-U-N-N-Y, P-U-N-Y. I don't know, but the dog's name was Poonie. Now, I said that I saw this dog when I was a kid. Well, I didn't actually see the dog, okay? This dog was afraid of its own shadow. It was just a tiny little Mexican hairless Chihuahua, okay? My grandmother loved that dog with all her heart. That dog slept under the covers at the foot of the bed of my grandparents' bed, under the covers. So my first memories of Poonie was when I was a little kid with my brother and then my sister later on. When we were staying there for a weekend with my grandparents, we'd get up in the morning, we'd go into my grandparents' bedroom, and there'd be a lump in the foot of the bed, and that was Poonie. And so we'd poke Poonie. Well, we tried to pet Poonie. My grandmother would say, don't poke Poonie, because Poonie would growl. And that kind of scared us a little bit. This lump in a bed growling at you. Of course, Poonie didn't spend the whole day under the covers in the bed. No. When my grandparents had gotten up and gotten ready for the day, my grandmother would wrap Poonie up in a black cashmere sweater. It was always a cashmere sweater, nothing but the best for Poonie, and completely wrap Poonie up like you had a bundle of laundry kind of a thing, and take Poonie out to the living room and set Poonie down in my grandmother's chair, which was a wicker chair, and that's where Poonie spent her day. Now, I don't remember watching Poonie eat too often. I don't remember seeing Poonie being let out for a walk or to do her business. But it must have happened. But I remember this big black cashmere coated lump in my grandmother's chair. And there was Poonie all day long. Now, my grandmother kept telling us all the time, don't go near Poonie. Poonie bites. Well, my uncle, my father's brother, who was younger by about 7 years to my father, he was still living at home at the time. Basically, when my parents were very young when they had me, very young. So my uncle was a teenager in those days. And he used to tease Poonie. And what he would do, and us kids were watching, he would stick his hand into this cashmere tunnel. At the end of it must have been Poonie in there. And you'd hear this growling and the gnashing of teeth. And he'd stick his finger in there, and Poonie would latch onto his finger and just like try to tear it off. Well, here's the ironic thing. Poonie didn't have any teeth. I don't know why, but Poonie didn't have any teeth. I guess they must have all fallen out at one time. I have no idea how old Poonie was. Poonie was always there when I was a kid, and I do remember when Poonie finally expired, but I'll come to that. But it just seemed like Poonie had been around for like 30 years. I'm sure it wasn't that long, but it seemed like that. So he would do that and tease the dog. Of course, my grandmother would reprimand him for doing that. Leave that dog alone. Don't be doing that. And she'd look at us and, don't you do that. The whole bit. So we didn't. So we were a little bit afraid of Poonie as well. Remember, this is a little tiny Chihuahua, okay? But a Chihuahua that to us was pretty much invisible because all we saw was a lump in the bed and a cashmere sweater. So I do remember that because Poonie didn't have any teeth, that made eating, I guess, a little difficult for Poonie. Now this is a little gross, okay? I do remember seeing my grandmother take that bundle in the cashmere sweater, bring it out into the kitchen, put it on her lap, and when my grandmother was eating, she would feed the dog some of the things that the humans were eating. Except the dog didn't have any teeth. This is the gross part. So my grandmother would take like a piece of roast beef and she'd sort of chew on it a little bit, tenderize it, and then she'd take a little bit of it and she'd stick her hand into the cashmere tunnel and Poonie would have dinner. Now, I think Poonie ate soft dog food. I'm pretty sure of that. But again, in my memory, I don't ever remember seeing Poonie eat. I'm trying to remember where Poonie's dog dishes were and water and things like that. The dog was not abused. The dog was fed. I just don't remember those things. I guess my mind has blocked those details out because it focuses more on what I'm telling you. So anyways, that was Poonie, and my grandmother absolutely loved that dog. So much so that, like with all animals, it came to that point in its life where it expired. Now, again, I don't know the circumstances around Poonie's passing. I don't know if my grandmother had to take her to the vet and have her put down. I don't know if she died quietly as a lump at the bottom of the bed or in her cashmere sweater. I don't know those things at all, but I do remember the aftermath. This is the weird part of the story. Okay, well, weirder yet. My grandmother loved that dog so much that when Poonie expired, she took Poonie's body to a friend of hers who was a taxidermist. And she had Poonie stuffed. Yep, she had Poonie stuffed. And she had Poonie mounted on a leather cushion. And Poonie looked like, well, my dad used to say, looks like a little miniature racehorse the way it was sitting, or the Sphinx. It was sitting on the cushion, little paws out like that, head up. Now, I saw that. Gave me the willies. And Poonie was put in a showcase along with a whole lot of other stuffed dead things, because my grandmother and grandfather, when they were much younger, were into taxidermy themselves. Why she didn't stuff her own dog? Well, I guess she'd given that up years ago, and maybe that was just too emotionally too hard for her to stuff her dead dog. But anyways, that's where Poonie rested for many, many years in this glass showcase amongst other dead critters. When my grandparents passed away, and my grandfather passed away about 5 years after or so that my grandmother passed away, my parents, of course, had to go in and clean out their house and do all the arrangements that you have to do, with people's possessions after they pass on. One of the first things my father did was he took Poonie, who was on a pillow at that point, out into the backyard of my grandmother's place. There's a rhubarb patch. There was. He dug a hole in the rhubarb patch and buried Poonie. My father hated the fact that my grandmother had stuffed her chihuahua. And that was one of the first things he did. The thing about the rhubarb patch, though, which is a little bit of an aside, this story is, Poonie wasn't the first dog that got buried in that. My grandparents had other dogs over the years before Poonie, way back before I was on the scene. And I guess when those dogs expired, they all got buried in the rhubarb patch. And that rhubarb thrived. It was the best rhubarb I remember as a kid. So if you're looking for a way to get your rhubarb to be the best it is, plant it on top of a dead dog. I told you this was weird. Anyways, there is a moral to this story. It's weird and whatnot, but it was the love that my grandmother had for that dog. It's the same love that my grandmother had for all wildlife. Stray dogs would come to the door of her house, and stray cats, and she would feed them. She would always feed them. And she did the same thing for people, for stray people. There were families in her town that needed help. And she didn't just give out handouts, but she would hire these people to do work around her home. There were some ladies I remember in the town that she sort of took under her wing and looked after. There were some older ladies that were kind of shut in, that she would take shopping or she would pick up things for them as well. She did these for people because that was the kind of heart my grandmother had. If you met my grandmother for the first time, you might think she was kind of cold and somewhat severe, but she wasn't. She had a heart of gold. And really, Puni really showed that kind of immense love that my grandmother had. And that's the way I want to remember it. So that's my first story about Puni on a pillow. Next week, there's more. Okay, let's move to a totally different topic. Let's talk about what's happening in my 3D corner. So I did a modification, and I don't have it here to show it to you, but I'm going to show it on the Idiot Quilter because it has more to do with quilting than it does with my general vlog. And I basically modified a magazine holder to hold patterns. And I printed that out on my 3D printer, and it worked pretty good. But I also did, and you saw it in the teaser, the giant thimble. There it is. I don't know if in the teaser you got really a perspective about how big this thing is, but this is how big it is. And it is a thimble. Okay. Now, it wasn't designed by whoever designed it in the on Thingiverse, that's where you get all these things, to be a thimble. It was designed to have the shape of a thimble, but it was to be used as like a flower pot or a small garbage can or something like that. Now, I didn't want it this size because when I saw it, I thought, you know, this would make a nice little pincushion, but I need it to be smaller. I thought I had put in the right dimensions to, you know, modify it so it would be that size. Got printing it and realized very quickly, no, it's going to be big. I could have stopped the printer at that point, but I thought, you know, what the heck? Let's put the printer to the test to see if it can do this. And it did. I mean, this took a day and a half. I think it took about 15, 16 hours to print this size, but I think it's kind of nice. And this is one of the newer filaments I bought, which is purple, which I really love because of the shine on it. But then what do you do with it? Well, you could use it as a small little waste paper basket, I suppose. It would look cute in a bathroom or something like that. But I don't need a waste paper basket. Then somebody and I'll give a shout out to my friend in Regina, Dana. She said, why not use it as a scrap collector when you're sewing? And that's what I'm using it for. So you can see, you know, the bigger scraps, throw them in. So that's what I'm using it for right now. But I did make the pincushion size, and here we go. Same design, shrunk down, and I made it into a pincushion. I actually made 2 of these. I think they're really quite cute. They're easy to make, and they work really well for this. So I'm thinking of printing a few more of these up, and I can give them as gifts at some point in time. So yeah, so that was fun. Now the other things I've been doing is I've been thinking about, I found a whole bunch of patterns for pegboard, you know, stuff with the holes in it, and that you can print on your 3D printer and build, you know, using them as tiles kind of a thing, a pegboard wall. And I'm thinking that would be great for holding some of my sewing supplies, except I don't have any space to put one up. But I was telling this to Walter, and he's got a pegboard in his workshop where he keeps his tools. Most of them are on top of the workbench, not on the wall. But he said, you know, hooks for pegboard that he buys are actually quite expensive. And I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I did. I found a pattern for these. And these are hooks that go into the pegboard. And there's various sizes and types as well. And there's a whole bunch of accessories, like little boxes and things that go into the pegboard so you can put other things, or screwdriver holders and things like that. So I've made him 6 of these. I've tried them out. They work dandy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to print out a bunch of the other things too for him to organize his stuff a little bit more on his pegboard. But then he said to me too the other day, yesterday actually, he says, I really want like a thread stand, like one he's thinking of putting up. He had a piece of pegboard out in the garage still, and he was thinking of putting that up in his sewing room so he could hang some of his threads, his Aurifil threads and things like that. And I said, you know, I'll bet you there's a design for a holder meant for that purpose. So I went looking for one, and I found one. And this is this. This took about 8-9 hours to print. So your threads fit on here. It's the right spacing for Aurifil, the size of their threads. That's the thread of choice for us. And the beauty of this is you don't need pegboard because it already puts in 4 little holes for screws. And what he's going to do is he's going to screw nail this into the side of a bookcase he has in his workshop or in his sewing room, and it will hold his threads. So I'll have to see today if he wants another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these, and I'll print them out some more. And I did these in sort of that bronzy green that I was showing you with that bowl thing that I made back a week or 2 ago. So yeah, so you can make practical things with a 3D printer, okay? But I'm still into it for the fun of it. And yeah, so that's all I've been doing with that. So that takes us to my current project, my fabric sculpture, and this is part 3, and I'm going to insert it right here. For this layer, I want to stiffen my fabric and sort of crumple it up to give it some shape, sort of an abstract shape, and then add pieces of this to the actual canvas. So this is kind of the sculpture part of it. Now I have this fabric stiffener called Stiffy, and it says to stir this up well, and then you can pour it on and brush it on or dip your fabric or whatever into it, and then do whatever you want with it and let it dry. I have used this product before and it works fairly well. I just question whether or not it's going to make this piece of fabric stiff enough. So I'm going to do this piece, and I'm going to grab another piece kind of like this, but it's kind of small. I'm just going to open it up. Maybe just cut it in half to work with that. I'm just going to start with these pieces first. I don't want a lot of these, but we'll see what we can do. So I've given this a good shake, and I'm just going to pour it on here and then brush it into the fabric. You can see that it's the consistency is very, very runny. It's kind of like a white glue that's been watered down, and in fact I think you could make your own by doing simply that, just using a watered down white glue. You might even be able to do this if you put some matte medium, gel matte medium, mixed up with a little bit of water, and then do what I'm doing here. Now this of course is going to be messy. My hands, I debated whether I should put gloves on, but heck with it. It's just a glue. I'll be able to wipe it off. So I'm kind of brushing it in. I'm saturating this piece of fabric, but I don't want to get it like wringing wet. But I do want to get it into the fabric. And of course I'm doing this on a non-stick craft sheet as well, because that's going to make cleanup a lot easier. So I'm just really working it in with my brush so it penetrates both sides of the fabric. Okay, now let's get to the messy part where I squish it up. Ooh, it is very wet. Now I don't know if this is going to hold a shape or not. So I'm going to just put that over to the side and see what happens. And we'll take these two pieces and do something. We'll do the same thing. And I cut this in half, but I'm probably going to use it as one piece. I just thought it might be easier to work with if it was cut in half. Actually, it's kind of fun to do. You know, sometimes messy things are fun to work with. You know, it's like a kid. Again, you know, getting in there, sort of like finger painting. You know, when we were kids, we didn't really worry about how messy things got because there was usually somebody else around to clean up for us. But, so this may be the adult equivalent of getting messy. It's a little dry in this end. And I'm giving it enough time to penetrate the cloth. Okay, scrunchy time. Yay! Now I'm just letting these go whichever way they want. I don't want them all big round blobs, but okay, I think I'm going to grab another one because I'm having fun. Now this is a fairly big piece of fabric, so I think I'll just cut that down a little bit. Here we go. Now the other thing I was wondering is this fabric is fabric that comes from my scraps from my quilting, and oftentimes fabric, when you buy it off the bolt, has a sizing in it. And I noticed that this stuff at first is sitting on top of the surface of the fabric. And that might be because of the sizing, but I don't think that's going to affect things because it seems to be penetrating right through the fabric pretty good. Now you might wonder if this has a smell. It does, just a slight one. It smells like white glue. Yeah. So, you know, I'm thinking, I forget what I paid for this. It wasn't terribly expensive, but I'll just do that with that. And maybe grab one more piece. Let's see. Here's something in sort of a gold. I'm hoping that this stuff will make this fabric really stiff so it becomes like an object that I can stick to the canvas. We'll see. I think I need some more. Actually, I'm finding this kind of fun to do. It's kind of addictive once you get going. Now I have no idea how long these are going to take to dry. We'll see, but I have a feeling these are going to take like an overnight kind of thing. Maybe not. I think I need one more brighter color in here. I need a strip of orange. Okay. Let me make this one a little looser, a little longer. Okay, so I'm just going to let these pieces sit here and dry. We'll look at them in about an hour or so time and see how they're doing. And then we'll see about mounting them to the canvas and what we can do with that. So we'll be back. So that takes us to events in the past week. Update on my mother, she's fine. Nothing new or exciting to tell you there, as if there ever was. Her face is beginning to look a little better since her face plant. It has been taking quite a while. She still has a couple of little purplishy marks down here, but they are fading. And she says she feels fine and everything like that. So yeah, nothing new there. It's the same as always. And I can tell you that now when I talk to her, I don't phone anymore. I use FaceTime. And it's been working out fine. So I don't let the phone have to ring and ring until she thinks to pick it up or doesn't pick it up. Someone else gets her there, sets up the FaceTime, bang. Okay, so the other thing was, you've probably noticed, I got my hair cut. Okay, so I've already mentioned the fact that our government here in Ontario has lifted a few of the restrictions on lockdown. So one of those lifts was hairdressers could work again, but of course it can only be one person in the shop at a time. And, you still wear the masks and all that stuff. Well, those restrictions were lifted this past Tuesday. But the Friday before that Tuesday, we get a phone call from a hairdresser. She wanted to book us in on Wednesday of this past week for both of us to get our hair cut 3 o'clock Wednesday. Both of us, same time. Now, the way she was doing it was neither Walter nor my hair, especially Walter's hair, because he doesn't have any, take very long to cut. We can be in and out of there in 15, 20 minutes or less. So she wanted us both to come in. One would go in, get his hair cut, while the other one waited it out in the car, and then we would reverse roles. So we did that. I don't know, but she really cut my hair short. Now, my hair grows fairly fast, so not a big deal. But, in fact, right now, it's gotten a little longer than when it was first cut. But it was like a brush cut. I haven't had one of those since I was 7 years old. But that's fine, it grows. I'm lucky, it grows. So that's fine. I just kind of said, maybe she thought she'd make us look like the Bobbsey twins and give me the same haircut she gives Walter. But anyways, it's done. I'm happy about that. I've made my next appointment. Usually I make my appointments every 3 weeks, but I usually do like a whole bunch of them months ahead with her because she likes to do that. It keeps, her on schedule and everything like that. But she only put me down for one. And I said, are we not going to do more? And she says, no, I'm only going to do them one at a time right now because we don't know the situation. And she's right, because we're anticipating this lifting of some of the restrictions is going to go right back down to total lockdown in a few weeks' time. Why, you may say? Because the kids are back in school, physical school. And yeah, as much as our government tries to deny the fact that these kids are little germ bags and spreaders of this disease, especially in the environment that they find themselves in, that, the government's made it all safe and everything. Yeah, no. I passed a schoolyard the other day. There were kids all out in the schoolyard. Yeah, they were wearing masks and they were all clustered, 10, 20, 15, whatever, all together, close together, because they're kids. That's what kids do. Okay? So, yeah, no fault of the kids. It's just kids, right? But it's the fault of our government who refuse to realize this is the reality of the situation. So we're anticipating we're going to be locked down again in another couple of weeks because we don't have the vaccine. Nope. Our government has screwed that one up royally too. The distribution of it. Yeah, they blame it on the pharmaceutical companies and, that they can't keep up and whatever they tell them. But I don't know, the Americans are getting it. Not us. No, not the Canadians. No. Canadians are always put on the back burner. Always. Oh, we're the first to be asked to help out in a world crisis, in keeping peace in a war-torn company, something like that. Give money to feed starving third world country people and things like that. Yeah, we're always the first to be asked for that, and we rise to the occasion. But we're always put on the back burner when it comes to when we need some help. Whatever. We'll just continue being safe, I guess. Okay, that was a mini rant. And that's about all that's happened in the past week. So, what's coming up? Well, the retreat. Not till March the 20th, but update on that. As you already know, completely full. I have started a waiting list. I have asked the people that are on the list, on the actual registration list, that if they think they can't make it, please let me know by March the 15th so I can open up their spot for someone on the waiting list. I had one cancellation last night, and so I have done what I said I would do. I went to the top of my waiting list and put a person in there. So I'm hoping, life gets in the way, okay? And that's perfectly acceptable. If you need to cancel, that's fine. I've got people that'll take the spot. However, what I'm really hoping is that people don't leave this to the last minute, or worst, decide on the day of they're not going to show up. Because that's just not fair. And I do have people on the waiting list. So, I'll be sending out, for those of you that are registered already for it, I will be sending you out some updates in another week about procedures and things like that. There's not a whole lot of rules for this, but I know some people, for example, are not as familiar with Zoom as others, so I'm putting together a little package of information that will help make the experience less threatening technically, if you're one of those people who have not really used Zoom much. And I'll have a schedule out at some point too, showing you exactly what the day will look like, and some procedures for when you sign in and things like that. So I'm looking forward to this. I know other people have told me they're looking forward to it. It should be a whole lot of fun, and I'm really sorry if you're one of the people that did not get an opportunity to register. I wish I could open it up to more people. There may be future ones if this one works out okay. This is the experiment. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot here about things I should have done and things that I shouldn't have done and that kind of thing. That always happens when you do something for the first time. And if, I find that having 90 people on a Zoom is actually manageable, I will look into opening it up to maybe 150 or something like that. The next one. We'll see. I did talk about some of my concerns about that on yesterday's Stephen and Walter Live, so I'm not going to rehash it here, but there's a fairly extensive discussion about that on Stephen and Walter Live if you're interested. Okay, so I think that's about it. I have nothing else coming up this week. Boring. So I'll just have to make my own fun, won't I? So I hope you have an exciting week. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're happy. Stay in. We're not over this thing yet. And we'll see you real soon. Bye for now.